Oh man, we had two solid slice of life chapters. I won't complain about Ichiya. I am an Ichiya enjoyer. I personally probably put him as my favorite when it comes to comedic joke characters. And I will say, just as a side thing to add in there, I don't think that Ichiya is like 100% a joke character, like as a gag. I think it's more like 40%, maybe even 45%. But I think he's ultimately important into things because he has a lot of parts where he just comes in clutch and he's able to really just present himself as a serious character, especially in like Alvarez and stuff. I feel like if his role in Tartarus when they added it in the anime, if they had that in the manga, or if it was a little bit more planned out to where you saw like a little bit of foreshadowing build up instead of just Ichiya and Ko just kind of trying to figure out what to do with one of the faces, then it would have further put it in there. Because I mean, like, this is a dude too that spent his time getting set up with trying to find the Fairy Tail Guild during the whole disappearance with Sirius Island. So it's not like he just was not doing anything in contribution to them, especially without them asking. Like, he's able to just come in clutch all the time. And I've always really liked that about Ichiya. He's just that kind of guy. Hope my dog isn't too loud in the background, but as it is, right now we're opening up to actually getting directly into the chapter with like the actual lore and story moving forward. Not just more fun stuff, not just more stuff going on with some side characters. I still wonder if either of those chapters have any form of story relevance, even if it's like way later. Like I talked about it a bit with my one with Eric. If we're gonna see Cobra have a moment just way later on, and the reason we had like the whole chapter with him is to set up knowledge of where he's at and what he's been up to. I think it would make a lot of sense if his whole encounter with Max, or sorry, not Max, with Warren, had him. I was just thinking about Max in general and hoping like, well, maybe he'll do something, but as of right now, he just kind of exists. I mean, I really like the stuff still with him and Agil. I'm hoping that'll come back to have some form of story role, but for right now, the closest we've got was just the Agil stuff. I mean, we'll see. Maybe they'll go talk to Agil. I really like the idea of at some point they go and talk to people in Alvarez to get some form of information, and the connections from the Alvarez arc have further reason to be brought up and to kind of be reassessed moving forward. But as of right now, we open up to, I know, like, I was hurt the second this chapter started. Like, right as we got going into it, we had the whole bit where Jellal is leaving, going back to Ishgal. I'm guessing that he's gonna try and like maybe figure out like a place to live. That's something I didn't really consider too much when it came to Jellal, just like his daily goings. Like, maybe go at the very end, or maybe he wants to become a member so he can officially join in on the 100 Years quest, and that's kind of what he's going with. But I could see that to where if he went and became an official member and then got permission from Makarov, he would be able to go and sign up and then be on the 100 Years quest, maybe even join specifically into the main Fairy Tail crew team. Because I wonder how that would work if other members of the guild, say like Laxus and Jellal, went and signed the contract. Would they have to, for some reason, compete outside of the main cast, or would they be able just to kind of show up and immediately start going with them and join up with their crew? Either way, I imagine there's going to be some form of reveal later where maybe he comes back during a point and he's like, oh, I'm actually officially on the quest now, and he's got his guild emblem and everything. Maybe he shows up with the next squad. I think that would be really cool and make a lot of sense, because if, like, you already have people that have somewhat of knowledge of it, but there's no reason for them just to be like, yeah, let's go along with it. But if they knew that there was something dangerous going on and there was some need for help coming up, then it would make sense of like if Jellal was able to bring in, say, like Laxus, maybe even Gajil, and then come help the main crew with the events of what's going to be going on with the Fire God's castle. And I think that was just cool in general. I mean, I don't think anybody's ever going to hate on just having some nice moments with Jellal and Urza, especially when it's not just them standing around and we have them with some nice interactions and like them going on like a pseudo date or seeing any form of fun interactions between the two of them. but more so actual like full step in the next spot for Jellal's character and having him go and become a member of the guild. I think that's just a huge plus in general. And now we have full confirmation that's what he's going to do. I don't imagine he's going to just kind of like go on a vacation and wait until he gets back, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. I guess he could just go and chill for a little bit before he ends up joining the guild. Like maybe he does like shop around and try and find a house, try and find some land. I imagine he's got his own personal savings and stuff set up, just because he would have to have something just to do the whole Dark Guild Hunter whole lifestyle. So I assume Jellal's got something up his sleeve that will be able to kind of get him nicely set up once he gets back to the guild. But as of right now, I'm just happy that it wasn't just Jellal leaving and that was it. It was like, hey, I am gonna dip out, but I do like have full intentions of joining the guild, and I'd really appreciate if when you come back you could put in a good word for me. I think it would be really cool if he wants to wait until, like, ideally as like a, you know, once Urza and them get back, he'll decide to join the guild. But I'd be really cool with it being like if he joins and then there's a reason again that he has to muster up a crew and they're going to go out and help the main cast with something over with Ignia and his whole banding of things. Because I imagine that relatively everybody in the main cast is going to be capable of fighting people from Fire and Flames. But just as the numbers right now, I don't think they're going to be able to just stand out in the whole of a Dark Guild at this level, because even if, say, there's a member for, you know, each of the top people, not even counting Ignia, are relatively close to people who like the Dark Dragon Slayer Knights, I think the main cast would just get overwhelmed by number, because you know, they only have so many people. That's why I figured Jellal was going to be sticking around too. Is it's just an extra person to have a number of opponent for running into adversaries. So unless Mishima wants to bring in more people, just because as of right now I feel like the main cast doesn't have the total squad numbers to deal with the whole Dark Guild. Because this isn't just like a random Dark Guild. You know, obviously if they're whole head and led by Ignia, there's going to be a lot more just general danger. Because I just don't really see him having any weaklings in their group. Maybe some people who are weaker but have very high potential and are still climbing up and they have the motivation to and like the mentality for it. But other than that, I just don't see him keeping people around that aren't of noteworthy strength. And then we had some more fun stuff going on this chapter, like Wendy's like trying, like barely able to stand over the counter of the bar trying to get information on what's going on. You're at this place Hawthorne, and well, it's a town called Hawthorne. The place is called the Peacock Saloon. I wonder if that's supposed to be a whole peacock kind of meme to it. There's like a, you know, old style Wild West theme here, which I really like. I like the motel, David Motel. It's just real nice, kind of like little nods and just casual setups, nothing crazy. But I really like the fact that we are seeing more locations. We're seeing towns. We're seeing just general bits of exploration. Because that's one thing we really skipped over when it came to Alakatasia and we're doing stuff with the Alvarez Empire. We didn't see that many places over there. I always thought that was a shame. Because Mishima doesn't do like world building everywhere. He likes to kind of just show us some spots of where we're at, give us little bits while we're at, and then kind of spread it over time. Like we have a good amount of general locationary world building, but in Ishgal, it's really mostly towards Fiore, and we have some stuff with the other countries. But I liked a lot that we're with Guillotine and we're getting lots of spread locations, towns, and cities, and of just spread out notes and trying to figure out a little bit about each of them before we move on for the most part. And even stuff like, oh, you know, this place has connections with Gold Owl, and you know, it's a mining town. It's like, oh, that's cool. Like this place has a little bit of its own character. So with here, what exactly are we kind of getting? We're getting some like little, you know, Wild West town in the danger of things with some problems with the Dark Guild, which I'm very much happy about. I do really want to talk about that. We'll get to that in a minute. Also, I like the style of the town because it reminds me a lot of Hargion. I think it's just like the port city kind of style. Obviously, like it's similar to how our fairy tale started, and we're seeing just a nice little kind of calming moment before we end up getting into the craziness of what's to come. So right now, like I said, we've got just them kind of just going over, talking to some dude. Did the guy's name even get said? The bar owner, or I guess he's just the, maybe he's not the bar owner, the bartender. I don't know if his name got brought up. There's like a whole bit where he's asking if Wendy is Natsu and Lucy's kid, but I like that Natsu just does the anime thing where he's like, he points out an anime thing rather. He's like, well, no, the hair's not right. Doesn't make any sense. How does the hair? How does the hair connect here? Because I know it's like a real thing, obviously, like your offspring have similar hair, but it's way more like with anime. It's like you either have ones where it's like characters and they're people related, like hair has no consistency, or it's so set consistent you have to pretty much just always look so close to everyone around you in your bloodline. It's almost like your family genetics are way more of a theme in some areas. But while they're questioning this guy and they're trying to figure out exactly if there's any types of guilds nearby, and this is something that I personally, I don't think I really had as a possibility, because I knew that Ignia was going to have his own crew, but I figured it would be more of like a cult following or something like that, to where it wasn't going to be a guild. I really like that. That's probably one of my favorite parts about the chapter, if not my favorite in terms of the setting. So we get this dude who, you know, who talks for, you know, the bartender guy, and he's telling that there is a guild nearby, and he's got his own like little character quirks. He constantly like kind of seems to have some like backtone talking of how much he's hungry and he really wants to fill his stomach. And he walks up, just, you know, doesn't kind of try and chat with them from his chair. I like that he engages them and from his chair, almost like he's just trying to make himself known, and then goes about kind of just doing what he wants. Very villain like, very just kind of bad guy-esque, without any form of care about what other people are going to be kind of like, how are they going to respond. This dude immediately just starts kind of, you know, trying to pull his weight around, but not so much as like trying to be a big powerful bad guy boss. It's more of he just seems to not really take anyone else's input into account. So it's like he doesn't care whether or not people are going to get in his way. He doesn't care whether or not, if like what they're going to say when he just apparently gets up and leaves. As long as he's met with it, something he finds satisfying, this dude just seems to be like, all right, cool, and then just goes on to the next thing. But I also wonder by the end of this chapter if he's going back with information, because that's something that is also a high possibility. We got this dude Brian. I was so worried from the first panel of him, because once we see the first panel, he looks like he might look a little more goofy than he actually is. If you've read Eden Zero, there's a dude Mora. He's not, you know, he's a similar-esque design. He just seems almost like an evil Willy Wonka, I guess, is really the kind of like an easy way to kind of put that idea in your head. But I don't know what it is about the first panel when he's still like his design isn't fully shown. He's still got some like half silhouette on him. But when you see his full design, I really like him. I really like the checkered hat. That might be my favorite thing about his design. I like the checkered hat. He's got like these one-ear piercings and this facial makeup and like a throat and mouth tattoo. Like he's like the Willy Wonka Joker fused together. I just think that he just looks neat. I like this dude. I know he's just going to be the first person we meet from Fire and Flames. He might be the one from their squad who's like the most aggressive in terms of general like picking of fights. Like there's usually one of those characters, you know, for instance, you have someone like Agil or Zenkro, just to kind of have that aggressor in their squad. And I think that is important for the first chapter of seeing him, because for example, we have Kyria, who's also an aggressor, but Kyria isn't an outright evil person, and we saw that with Diablos, is she wasn't really much of a problem until it was very clear that they had some form of beef. And it's you know, when everyone's on edge, it just comes down to who strikes first, versus here when David, or almost a David, the Hotel David over nearby, But Brian, which also is just funny, his name is just Brian. I'm sure that it sounds crazy and exotic for the Japanese. It's different versus like, yeah, it's just Brian. The name's Brian. But he just walked over there thinking, thinking the exceed look tasty with not like just a curiosity. He had the full intent of going out of his way and having them consumed. So that's a big difference for them. There wasn't any, oh yeah, let's have a standoff. He already had the intention of this before he had beef with Natsu, where it's like if everybody was like getting in this guy's face and like trying to pressure him, and he's just like, all right, this is my move in response to this, that'd be a bit different. But he ends up just, going out of his way after that to say like, well, I guess I could say sorry because I can't say they look scrumptious when I don't even know how they taste yet. And this is after like Natsu gets up and gets right in his face. Natsu's one to not really let people breathe if he doesn't like them, if he has an issue with them. He's not going to want them at all to have a moment of comfort until he's got that beef squashed. But this dude, I like his first display of his magic or his curse, whatever he's going to end up being, because I'm there's the possibility he's not human, but that's going to just depend on what we see. Like, he could be a demon, he could have some really weird, obscure dragon slaying attribute. Like, or what if he's more like a weirdly body, like almost consuming dragon eater? Like the idea, it's like we want to have something kind of like a dragon eater, but it's more of the eating aspect. So he is kind of like almost like a dragon eater acnologia, where but at the same time, instead of it being eating magic, he'll just consume relatively anything within his threshold, and and sacrifice his body as part of it. And that's why he's got like these weird mouth hands. Like, he had to give up an aspect of humanity to do that. Because when he goes and like makes his hand to where a big old fanged mouth comes out to go eat the exceed, it grows really large, like as big as his body. And I will say I really like how it has the big lips around the mouth. I think it just looks cool. I think it adds like an extra level of just menacing, like spookiness, just to have this almost horror-like maw kind of coming at you, and it growing as it happens. It isn't just coming at to grab you and bite you. It's going until it's big enough to consume you. But obviously Natsu's not standing for that. Goes and just gives the guy a hook, knocks him down, but he ends up consuming the flames that Natsu hit him with. And there's something that was interesting too, is they're talking about how like he's just saying that he really enjoyed it, and now his stomach is full after eating those flames. But when Lucy and Gray are kind of like contemplating whether or not he ate them, Wendy's talking about how it more looks like he absorbed it into his body. And that's what I'm talking about. It's like, what if this guy is kind of like, and I'm thinking just more in like the large scale theories of like why Ignia has a guild. Like, what is his purpose for these members? And, I assume everybody in it has some form of reason to be there. Like, what if he made this guy kind of like how Aizen made Wonderwise from Bleach, if you know who that is? So he's a character made to counter a level of fire. So just in theory, if Ignia is like, oh, well, I want to be able to put somebody out there that I can contend with, what's my problem is, oh, it's my fire. I'm going to be burning too much of my opponents up. I need to have somebody that can counter specifically my fire. And in doing so, what if I, set it to where I have to be able to beat this guy with sheer brute force, and he ends up just trying to train that way to where he's pushing himself by his heat and his fire output not being able to do as much until he reaches a certain threshold, and he's just testing his physical capabilities and what his full output is like. Just an idea, almost like a living training dummy. And that's why this guy just seems to kind of be like this almost crazy living stomach of wanting to just to eat things, as well as he almost has like this unsated want to consume. So it's like why he would want to fight. It's like, oh yeah, that way I can always have him ready to where he's going to want to fight with me, kind of thing. And then we get just a little bit of info from the dude who runs the bar, telling us at the very end that this guy is a member of Fire and Flames. And again, I thought Fire and Flames was going to be more of a cult, some form of following and almost religious sect kind of thing, not as much a dark guild. The dark guild is what really sold me on them already. I love the fact that Ignia has one, made dark guilds relevant again. I think that's super sick. They haven't really been of any form of note since Tartaros. There was no reason to have them back when we ended up getting to Alvarez, and the dragon gods all have had their own squads, but none of them have been officially like in anything like that. I know Diablos was Selene, but that was more so after the fact, so it's not really the same thing of what we're going for in concept. But him adopting the ideas that humans have, and and we don't know the context of it, but he ended up forming a guild of his own, or he ends up joining a guild, because we don't know if maybe the guild existed before Ignia. I don't know. I would assume Ignia made it, but there's also the possibility that he ended up joining, which would be really cool. I think it would be really sick if he was not the guild master and somebody else was the guild master. So he's not the master of the guild, but he's pretty much in charge. So he has somebody who's mostly just doing like the whatever somebody who needs to know all the ins and outs of running the guild is going to be up to, but he's going to be more like their champion, kind of like how Natsu is now. Natsu's the strongest in his guild, but he is not the leader of his guild, and I think that would be really cool to have that opposed for Ignia too. But as of right now, we've got 4 sick members. I mean, I'm counting Ignia in there, but we have both the Signario sisters. We don't know entirely with their full capabilities. I really like the fact that we have them actually relevant post the Viernes arc and with Gold Owl, but now we have it to where their capabilities are going to be, clearly not fully explored yet, but seen once we get to the arc. But we have this dude Brian as well, and he is going to be a menace, I would assume. His magic is really weird. He himself seems like he's just going to be a fun character to be around. And I like his general, like I said, his design. I think the weird color palette of his is going to be really fun. I'm hoping when it comes to his clothes, it's pretty straightforward. Like, I would love it if his outfit is mostly black and white, but his face makeup is so really cool, like purple or green or something just really weird. I mean, he could just have red. I think red would be cool. Like, if they're going to do red, I need deep red, like really deep, aggressive blood red or something sick just to make him look spooky. But really, really cool chapter. Like, the first half was fun. I like just the general stuff we got with Jellal and Urza. Like, I would be really sad if we didn't get something to at least know what Jalal's up to, and he's just gonna be like, all right, bounces, I'm out, and then just walks away. But I really loved once we got to actually seeing where we're gonna be going and where this is all gonna be directing, because this dude is really cool. I like the spookiness of his design. He just looks like an evil bad guy right now. But unlike with Diablos, this dude is intended to be an evil bad guy. And I think that's one of the things that Mishima is going to be really doing heavily with. Because, like we talked about, even though that Georg was a rough dude, he never did anything illegal, and his guild was fully legalized. Whereas this is what we're going to be seeing as a dark guild, as actually seeing dudes who want to have a whole setup, but they don't care about what the laws are, and they want to just run things their own way, which I really like, because we didn't have a chance to learn anything about the guilds in Alvarez, because everybody in Lacatesia was already united under the Alvarez Empire. And we've had some guilds in Guiltina, but I really like that we're seeing something that I didn't even really consider that was going to be a thing. Because my assumption, once we got this stuff, like, oh yeah, if we're going to have any relevant guilds, they're probably going to have to be the top of the top. Like, pretty much the peaks of their areas. Otherwise, how are they contending with people in the main cast and anyone relevant to the main cast? We got Diablos. Diablos is the top wizard guild on the continent. We got Gold Owl. Gold Owl is the top alchemy guild on the continent. So unless we're going to have any other classes or anything brought in, I think the next best step is something like this, a dark guild, and then just seeing what exactly the dark guild is going to be compromised of, I think is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to see more members of Diablos, of Fire and Flame. I want to see their guild emblem. I want to see a couple more of their members, and I really want to see what their number 2 member is like. Whoever is like right below, like whoever's the second strongest, whoever is right after Ignia. I'm very excited to see who that is and what that character is like. Whether or not it is the guild master or not. I still really want it not to be Ignia as the guild master, unless it is just going to like either straightforward Ignia is just a guild master, people do stuff for him, or we have some reason and backstory as to why Ignia would pop in and join a guild. I think it'd be really cool if there was a guild made in service to him and then he ended up joining, or if there's a guild that is made to follow him, because I would like it. My ultimate thing is either he is a member and he's not the strongest, but it's more of like he's the champion, or he is not officially a member of the guild, but the guild exists for him. Kind of like how Zareth had, made everything for eventually, for fun, but also with the eventual aim at taking down Acnologia, is if maybe he thought of something similar with a guild, or he ended up being like, well, if I'm gonna get stronger, I need to figure out ways to get stronger outside of what I've already been doing. And then ends up looking for like a guild and like has somebody who's like, hey, I want you to find strong members and people for me to fight, and just have the idea of like, because like imagine if it's similar to Zareth, where he's like, yeah, I want to make the Aetherius so they can kill and end me. If Ignia is like, hey, I want you to make a guild specifically to gather people to fight me, because your guys' job is pretty much to just keep pushing me and letting me get stronger. If you guys eventually just, if it's because if you had a whole setup where he just wants people to only really specialize into fighting him, getting stronger to fight him, and he's like, yeah, everything else you guys need, I'll do it for you, but pretty much when you guys aren't doing whatever, I need you to be getting stronger, and just show up to battle me every once in a while, or in vice versa, where he shows up and decides he's going to fight them for a bit. Like the origins around his guild, I think, are going to be really cool, and just seeing exactly what they're going to be doing and why exactly he was fine joining a human guild or creating a human guild, or what. Maybe there's like a bunch of people in his guild that aren't human. I think a mixed set, like if we had humans, some dragons, some demons, it'd be really cool. Maybe even another Machias, and we have it like actually be able to explore outside of just wall. I think it'd be sick just to see a larger scope from within Fire and Flame. I think there's so much that we could get out of this guild, not in terms of like, yeah, they can do anything and everything, but it's more so of like what we're going to be seeing from them and why, because they're just a really weird construction in the verse, and everything about them is going to tell us a little bit about Ignia, but also just like having a dark guild around again, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm really looking forward to their input. I know a lot of people really like the idea of this, and I'm really hoping to see what exactly we've got going on. It's the Year of the Dragon, so this is going to be the hype for it. This is going to be the move. I wonder if Mishima still wanted to kind of get past the Vierna stuff and get Ignia all set up for the year. But that's just going to be something we're going to have to wait and see. I think we're off to a good start. It's just one chapter so far, so it's not like we can really kind of go too crazy about it. I think once we get a few more chapters in, we're going to have a better tone and understanding. I don't want Brian to get his fight already, even if he's like, that guy who's the first one down in Fire and Flames. I'm hoping that we have more of an understanding of their group and understanding more of what we're going to be dealing with before that. Personally, I don't think he should go down first unless he is like actually like really weak on the totem pole, because I would really like to see more of Fire and Flames before we just start knocking down members. I think you should have members who aren't big deals in the comparison of like the scope of things being on display. Like, I think it'll be really cool if we just see some of their members in general, and it's not just the people with like a rank and title, and those are going to be the dudes we see. If we just, those are important, but I want to see at least a couple members who are, we're just members, and this is what an average member of Fire and Flame is like, and this is what you're going to be dealing with just 1v1. Because I think it'd be really cool if we got like, say we just had 3 members, like it just is like a scenario. We had 3 members who none of them were like big deals in terms of rankings, but they're like, oh yeah, we joined recently. We want to kind of prove ourselves, and so we came after the Salamander to fight him. Kind of like the Sylph Labyrinth members when they ran into him over at the Sun Village. But imagine instead they're like kind of rookie members, and they're the ones in over their head, and they want to try and fight Natsu. To where it's like maybe a chapter or 2 fight, and we're just seeing like their abilities and what they can do. And I don't think that they should just like straight up get no diff by Natsu, but I would really like to see like a kind of like an understanding of what we're dealing with, to where say like Natsu has to use you know, lightning flame dragon mode, or even like a fire dragon king mode attack. Like the most I would want to see, it's like he fights them a little bit, gets pushed a little bit, he goes into fire dragon king mode, and then he just stomps all of them. But it tells us like, oh yeah, this is how powerful these guys are, and this is what level of danger we're going to be having as like the entry to it. I would really love it if we had something like that, to where like imagine if we had like a period of time to where while they're doing like some just general world building and exploration, we had enemies from Fire and Flame sent or run into them, kind of like almost a little episodic, to where we're just kind of having like, we go location to location and we have some short fights, to where before we actually get to Fire God's castle, everybody in the main cast has had like a, you know, just an additional fight, like where it's a chapter or so just fighting some new members of Fire and Flames. I think that would be really cool, like 10 something plus chapters of us just getting a couple fights each, getting some nice just general flexes, getting people's, you know, bodies ready for the big fight, kind of like getting them started out, to where like at most everybody in the main cast has like a medium level of fight. And then maybe you introduce some more people, because I think it would be really sick if we had something similar to Caracol Island. Or actually, here's a good example is Eden Zero had some of those guys. That dude Moro was part of their group. Was it B Squad? Where we saw a couple fights with them, and it's like each of the main cast members had a fair fight, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, all out, they have to put in all their stops, hardest fight they've had the whole series. But then like after the time you beat them, those guys were whatever B Squad 9, and then you had B Squad, I think it was 1 or B Squad 0 show up. So it's like, oh shit, well now these guys are here, much more powerful. They didn't get to really do anything. They were set up to be justice victims, but the idea of when you have that kind of like flex and presence shown, and then you end up showing what the characters are going to be dealing with, kind of like how we had Marin Hollow and then Brandish shows up. I think that something like that is a nice tone setter for the arc, and will tell us a little bit about Fire and Flame before we actually have them on display and have them actually being like, all right, time for the big people to fight. Because I think that stuff like that does a lot for the structure of things. Like the Spriggan 12 are a little different because there's 12 members. There's just a lot for them. I think that was one of the things Tardor should have done, is we should have had a couple like lower people, even just a few. I know that once you don't have enough members, it doesn't feel like a guild. And luckily Diablos has lots of smaller members. I say a lot of, but like a good amount of smaller members, and then people that we saw that weren't returners. So it adds a little bit more to that scope of the bad guy group. If it's like you only see like the big people, just for instance, Black Clover had like the Dark Triad. We had a handful of Dark Disciples, but we really didn't have enough of them. So, and we only really fought them at the start. So once the things actually got going, it really just feels like a group with a couple boss fight characters, and nobody actually of large scale danger and like as an ongoing enemy. And that's something I think we need. I would love to get a couple more members where it's like we're gonna know that, oh yeah, these guys are gonna be a problem later down the line, and not just like characters show up and then get defeated shortly after they show up. But I think characters like that are important because it helps you understand some of the scope and size of the group, and it lets you kind of just be like, well, if this guy was this much of a trouble, I imagine this other dude is going to be just as much, if not a larger threat. And then, you know, as you go, like people with ranks, because just as to add it, I think it gives people that have like a rank in a bad guy group more of a presence. Because it's like, if you just are like, oh yeah, we're people that hold a title in like a ranked position, that's cool. But if you don't have people that aren't in that level, it doesn't really do anything for it. So not too sure where that would otherwise go. Just because that's like, if Brian doesn't have any ranks, but he's able to do anything threatening and dangerous, it would actually make the overall scope look better. So at least as of right now, I'd like to kind of just put my big hopes in the next chapter that we actually see a couple more of their members. I don't know if maybe it feels a little too early to see other members of them, because I don't imagine we're gonna have like just, oh yeah, like the members of Fire and Flames are sitting around and just talking. Like I don't imagine we would see anything kind of major like in their base and like large bits of their group until either Brian goes back and talks to them, or if he's defeated and they take note, something like that. But I would really like just to have some lore bits. Like if we got something like that, like next chapter, Brian goes back to talk to the other members of Fire and Flames, like, oh, what's the plan? And maybe not directly in their base, but like some form of like an HQ, like maybe not like, I guess it wouldn't be headquarters, like a hub. They go to some building, some of their members are there, like maybe like 2 other members, and they just kind of talk to them, be like, oh yeah, this is what's going on. Like I met some guys that had some fire magic, blah blah blah. Maybe one of them's like, dude, you're supposed to be looking out for guys with fire magic because Ignia wants to know when that one guy, the salamander dude, shows up, and we're supposed to be able to like stay on alert. Our job is to came here, intercept and fight him, which I think would be really cool too. Like what if Ignia made his guild to throw people at Natsu, so he's like forcing him to get stronger and to do something like that? I think that'd be pretty sick. I think that would be really cool just for him as a motivation. It's like, I formed a guild to weaponize against you and force you to become more powerful. Anyway, other than that, comment below, tell me your thoughts about this chapter. I really liked just how it was opening up with events, and again, I like Brian. I like his entry debut. I really like his weird design. The biggest thing for me in the chapter that made me the happiest, the fact that we got a Dark Guild again. And ooh, I can't wait to see what their squad, like their general squad, is like. Maybe get some titles, like whatever their bad guy just aliases, and to see their guild emblem. That's one of the big things for me too. I want to see exactly what their guild emblem looks like. But anyway, other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, friend, like, button, subscribe, and check out my other videos. But other than that, I appreciate you already subscribe. Thank you all for listening. Bye.